trot out the toddler, right? So remember, there's no philosophical difference between you as a zygote and you today, right? There's no philosophical difference. And so you can create parallel situations using a toddler. So say, right, a woman has a good career, or she's in a good, healthy relationship, she gets pregnant, she has her baby, and 2 years later she loses her job and her boyfriend becomes abusive. Can she, now that her circumstances have changed, kill her toddler? No. Or say a mom has too big of a family, and she comes in and she's pregnant, but she wants to keep this baby. Is it appropriate for her to kill her 3-year-old to replace the child? Right? No. And so the main point of this is that abortion is not the solution. So any difficulty, any circumstance, like these are sufferings, these are things that are real, but we never eliminate the sufferer, we alleviate the suffering. And so just again, try out the toddler, like, hey, like, if poverty isn't a reason to kill poor people, and the foster care system isn't the reason to kill foster kids, then maybe like killing innocent human beings is not the response to difficulties in our society. And we should be more creative than that. Okay, this one is one you hear a lot. It's a very difficult case, right? It's what about rape? Now, first and foremost, like, you don't know the experience of the person that you're talking to, right? And so you always want to have a relational, loving response, right? Because there really is like nothing worse, right? One of the worst things that can happen to a human being. And so that woman is a victim of a terrible like act of violence, and that man should be, or woman, right, should be punished for their crime. And so you have to build that common ground, make sure that you're showing like empathy, because it's real. Like, this is a real issue. But then try to bring in like the intellectual response, which is that like rape is an act of violence and an abortion is an act of violence. And so like, given that abortion is an act of violence, is this really going to help heal this woman, right? And so we have to make sure that we not only like reaffirm her dignity, right, but also the dignity of her preborn child, who is also a victim in this circumstance. But most importantly, I think, is that we have to address the real needs of women in crisis. And so, oftentimes, like, we act like abortion is a solution, right? But if a woman's impoverished and she's in an abusive relationship and she goes to an abortion clinic, the only response, like the only thing that they offer her is an abortion, and then they send her right back into the same circumstances she was in before, which most likely will bring her back to the abortion clinic again, right? Or, even more importantly, is that some women, or most women who are having abortions, have more than one child already, which means that she's in these terrible circumstances with children, and we're offering her the ending of the life of her child as opposed to actually empowering her to overcome those circumstances. And so that's why Patricia Heaton's quote, like, abortion is a reflection that society has failed women, is true. Right? Like, if this is our solution, again, we need to be more creative. And the core of that, again, is abortion is not a solution to issues. We should be focusing on alleviating suffering, not eliminating sufferers. It's also important to be prepared to help post-abortive women. And so we have like drop cards for Students for Life that has all the information for like Rachel's Vineyard, Project Rachel, Silent No More, because oftentimes like in this pro-life, pro-choice debate, women who have had real experiences with abortion get kind of lost. And so we want to make sure that they have a voice and also a place to be healed. And then just a few tips for if you ever encounter someone who is who is post-abortive. And there's different ways you can tell. Like sometimes they will just be very forthcoming with you and say like, I've had an abortion. And the best response is to give that woman space to share her experience. And so I always just said, I'm so sorry that this happened. Is there anything that you would like me to know about your experience? And then just give her the space to talk. Or if you think that someone is post-abortive, if they're kind of angry, oftentimes that's like an example of it, is you can offer her resources like caked in other resources, so it's not as obvious. Or you can say like, if you know someone who's post-abortive, like here's some information for them. So you kind of want to redirect away from her, but still offer her the support that she may need. But ultimately, like, we want to make sure that we're avoiding moral relativism, right? So abortion is not just like an ice cream choice preference, although like I would argue that ice cream choice preferences are also a moral decision. Because if you like vanilla over chocolate, you have problems. Anyways, no, I'm just kidding. But it is really ultimately a moral issue. It's not just a preferential issue. And like some choices are just wrong. So like vanilla ice cream and slavery, like they're just, no, I'm just kidding. But like, you know, like you can have vanilla ice cream, it doesn't make you like it doesn't mean that you're hurting another human being, except for me. But anyways, some choices are just wrong, right? So slavery, rape, torturing toddlers, mass genocide, like you would never say like, hey Stalin, it's cool, like you do that, I'll just be over here. Or like if your neighbor's beating up his dog, like you're never like, oh, it's totally fine, because like I'm personally against it, but like if he wants to like beat up his dog, and then release him on the neighbors, it's fine. Or like, you know, it's totally fine that my boyfriend and sister beats up her significant other, like as long as it's not happening in my relationship, I don't really care, right? It's the same with abortion, right? It's a human rights violation, right? Because we know that an innocent human being's life is ended in an abortion. So it's not a justifiable position, and so we have to take a stand. And so again, like, be emboldened by the fact that not only like do you have the tools to help you make this argument, you are also standing up for innocent human beings whose voices are silent and silenced often. Like I said, like from the beginning, like I'm here today only because I have the parents that I do. And so my voice is an important voice to be used for those who don't have a voice right now. And so it's same with you guys. Like every single one of you have been given gifts, talents, and a voice and a life to use to stand up for what's right. And so this is an issue just like other human rights violations where like you're important, every single one of you. So just be unafraid. Okay, so here's some other resources for you guys. Students for Life, Trent Horn, Justice for All, Equal Rights Institute, Stephanie Gray. She has this great book called Love Unleashes Life. So good. Amazing. And then Life Training Institute. And then if you guys, well, we'll cover this in the next training, so don't worry about it. But we have another training, but I was thinking we could take a break or maybe do some Q&A and then do the next training because it'll be more advanced cases. So do you guys want to do a Q&A now and then do a Q&A after the next one? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Can you give me a mic?
Yeah.
Also, we have lots of cookies and water still, so please eat them.
Yes, you said you were diagnosed with spina bifida. So what happened? Was it a misdiagnosis? Were you born with that, or what happened?
Yeah, so I had the HCI, I think that's, the HCI levels were a little off in my mom's womb. I think that, I might be wrong about thank you, HCG, sorry. They were a little off, so I had a little bit of a false test. Although I do have like a little bit of a malformation, because I have spina bifida occulta, which just means it's inside and not growing outside. But it's not severe at all.
Okay, so it was kind of a misdiagnosis then, basically.
Yeah. But
well, God bless. Thank God that they were wrong.
Yeah, no, seriously. Well, and also, it just made me think like, okay, well, what if I did? Like, what if I did have spina bifida? Does that make my life not worth living? And who gets to decide that, right? Like, because you can have a perfectly healthy child who's like a total a-hole, right? Like, there's no guarantees that like your super healthy child is going to turn out great, right? And there's no guarantees. I'm just kidding. But there's also no guarantees that like, you know, like the difficulty is going to determine that life is bad. Right? Like every single one of us like suffers. Like raise your hand if you haven't suffered in this life. And if you haven't, I will challenge you. Okay. So every single one of us have suffered, right? Does that mean that like we shouldn't be here? And every single one of us have a unique suffering, right? Which means that as unique human beings, our life is worth living, accompanied with suffering. It's just part of being human.
There's another one.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, just kind of, I thought of this, given what you were just talking about, but I don't know, have you ever encountered the argument, I guess I'm just assuming, I don't know if this is even true, but that Adolf Hitler was almost aborted. You know, I don't know if you've encountered that, but just like, you know, do you have any idea how you respond to that? Because it's kind of along the lines of what we were talking about you don't know how the abortion is going to turn out.
Right, yeah. That's a great question. So this is a cheap philosophy 101 question. Like every time, okay, so you know it's a philosophy major when they're like, well, yeah, but what about Thompson's violinist argument? Like, what about if baby Hitler was there? Like, wouldn't you just kill? If you had an opportunity, right, to shoot baby Hitler and stop, like, all these terrible things, right? Like, you could prevent Auschwitz, like, you could prevent the Holocaust just by killing Hitler. And then they're like, what would you do? And then they like walk away and like, oh, I'm going to use Hebrew because I'm so cool. But, I'm sorry, I'm not mocking, but it is kind of funny, like, come on. Right, because like, why can't we be more creative, right? Like, because the circumstances that made Hitler who he was what led Hitler to be who he was, right? And so why not take baby Hitler, instead of shooting him in the head, right, and take him to a better family who's going to raise him and care for him, right? Like, why is murder the first solution? Right? And so again, like, you don't know like what's going to happen to human beings, but I also always make the case too. It's like, okay, so if 3,000 human beings are aborted every single day, right, and we live in a culture of death, right? We live in a culture that says that human life is only valuable when we determine it to be valuable, then what makes mass shootings wrong? What makes mass genocide wrong? Right? Like Hitler just determined that all Jews were not worthy of life. On what grounds, like based on our own abortion laws, can we actually judge him? Right? So instead of maybe killing baby Hitler, why not strive to reinforce like the dignity of the human person and take him somewhere where he can be better? Like, you know, fix his circumstances. So, don't give me. Anyone else?
This may be the next one, but what's like the best way to respond to the foster system's broken argument?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so this is the one you'll hear a lot too, right? And so it's like the foster care system is broken, and if you have children, like if you abolish abortion, like you end abortion, like all these children are be unwanted, and they're going to be in the foster care system. It's already bad, already overrun, right? And the response is like clearly we said, like, abortion isn't a solution, right? Like you would never say, let's fix the foster care system by just killing all the foster care kids now, and then we can replenish the system, fix it, and then go from there. Right? So ending human life is not the solution. However, it is a serious difficulty, right? Like this is a serious issue. But I always look to like Alabama, right? So Alabama has some of the most pro-life laws in the country. They also have one of the best foster care systems, right? Because they've implemented foster care reform, and they have worked on actually making sure that like children are being placed back with their family or being placed with a good family. And so that's something that we can do. But not only that, like we should be streamlining the adoption process more in the United States, because there are, I don't know the exact numbers, but you can have unwanted pregnancies make up the majority of pregnancy abortion causes for abortion. But there are enough parents that are seeking children who are wanting to adopt that you could spend at least 2 to 4 years